Okay, the age-old question, radar detectors and bikes. Does it all actually work? Who knows? I don't. I know that years ago it used to work, it used to be good in a car. I tried it on bikes years ago too and it was okay, but it was hard to get the sound to the helmet. I figured that these days it would be a little bit easier, so I have bought some stuff and I'll show you what I've done and what I'm doing, and then we can try it out. We can make some videos and see how it goes. So what we have is a Redline Escort EX. This is supposed to be one of the better detectors at the moment that's currently available. And we have a waterproof housing here, which you mount to your bike. Typically mounts with one of these handlebar-y kind of things onto your bars. No good for me, I've got a sports bike, that's not going to work for me. So what I've done is I've modified that thing. I took some bits off it. I had a mount here which used to mount my phone to my bike. I've raised it up a little bit, reset it. I've drilled the hole out on the bottom of the bike mount thing that was supplied with this case, and that fits pretty nicely and I can adjust it. So I now have a waterproof casing with my Redline EX inside, which should hopefully work pretty good. It has a little exit hole on the side here for cords, and I'm just routing the wires at the moment down the side of the bike underneath the tank to the battery down here. And what we have on the end of this cord is a red and a black, which is your battery, positive and negative. And these other sewing machine just went past. And these other wires here, these two here, and these two wires go into the side of the unit here, and they are for headphone output. Now I run center in my helmet, wherever my helmet is. Oh, my helmet's locked away, but anyway, I run center in my helmet. You could run cardio center, whatever you want. The idea was that there's an application that you get for this phone. You download the phone app onto your phone, you connect to your radar detector via Bluetooth, and voila, you're supposed to get alerts via your phone. And while that all sounds good and perfect in the perfect world, the reality is that we tested that in the shop with radar guns and stuff, and it does not work. It sort of works. It sort of works some of the time and sort of doesn't work the rest of the time, and lots of people had lots of complaints about the app. So if you're buying this phone for the updatable app and you're trying to get your alerts on your phone, I suggest that you don't do that, because it's crap, it's rubbish, it just does not work properly. But however, we also did a test with the headphone output on here, and the headphone output here does actually alert you properly. So what happens with the app is the app will alert me sometimes to my center, sometimes it doesn't work at all, and it's always too slow. It always takes about a second after you actually get the alert. It alerts you once and then it doesn't alert you again. It doesn't give you the beeping or the beeps or the intensity or any of those things that you need to know what's going on. So it's far better to run the headphone output into your helmet. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run it into my helmet. I've got a couple of things over here that I have bought from JCar. So over here we have some wire to get it up the inside of my jacket, a headphone which we're going to run, and we're going to cut the end off this and we're going to mount that inside the helmet so it's in there all the time so it can beep and carry on, and a plug to plug this all into, which so that we can plug it in and disconnect it and do all those kinds of things. So that's the plug there. See? So that's the idea. That's the temporary idea. Now I'm going to do a trip to Auckland tomorrow. I wanted this thing working. I didn't want to wait. Now the better way to do this is via Bluetooth, of course, but not via the Bluetooth that the Escort comes with. The best way to run this stuff is via a center system on your handlebars, and I'll show you those systems. And you can buy the system. You know, they're a bit overpriced, brand new. I've seen them secondhand. I'm going to buy a secondhand one for sure. Mounts to your handlebars. It gives you an auxiliary input, so that what you can do is you can run any other audio source you want into your center, and it will then come through in your helmet on your center, which is perfect. And that's exactly what I want to happen. I want all the alerts. I don't want some of the alerts or part of the alerts. I want the whole lot. I want to know exactly what's going on. So I'm going to look for one of those center units and hook that up later, but for now I'm going to use a hardwired earpiece, which will give me the alerts anyway. So that's going to do for tomorrow. I'll be able to test it, I'll be able to make some videos, I'll be able to tell you how it goes. Now the thing is, of course, these days with radar detectors, there are dedicated motorbike ones, but generally they're not as good as better quality radar detectors. So I think this is a better system and a better way to do it. I think if you want protection, you know, when you're overtaking or you're in an overtaking lane where the cops love to sit, then this kind of thing is worth it. I think if this saved you one speeding ticket, it would pay for itself. So it's worth doing. If it saved you a loss of your license, not to say you should be doing that sort of thing, of course, but if you were, and it saved you, then that would be worth it in itself as well. It's not particularly effective against radar guns. A radar gun, a cop can turn it on and off and pulse you, so you might not get a lot of warning. But if there's cars in front of you and they're pulsing them first, you'll probably get a warning. It's not real good against reflex cameras where they have, you know, mobile cameras and they're kind of angled across the road. But then again, motorbikes are pretty good against those because they're generally facing towards you, and we don't have front-mounted number plates, so you know, that's kind of a saving grace there, I guess. Anyway, that's what I'm up to, it's what I'm doing, so I'll get on with it and let you know how it goes. I've got the radar detector hooked up, I've got the wires in here, I've got my headphone in here, so I can just plug myself in and unplug myself later. What I'll do is that plug will just go to another thing over here, or wherever I mounted a center device. Maybe I'll mount another one off here. And then I won't need the cable, I'll be completely wireless and the alerts will go to my helmet, which is great. So what we can do now is we can fire up the detector. It's a little, what I should really be doing is I should have really probably would have been just a little bit better if I wired this into the lights as well, so when the lights turn on this comes on, and I haven't done that yet. But I have done that, however, with the next thing that I will show you, which is pretty cool. So that's all waterproof. That's running in there. And now what we've got is we've got my phone here, and we can run the dashboard for the radar detector. So I can be running that dashboard, so I have a visual display of what's going on. But as I say, I don't fully trust this. And the reason I don't fully trust it is because the alerts when they come to the phone app just don't seem to be as instant as well, maybe they're instant to the phone, but they certainly weren't instant to the earpiece anyway. Not via this way anyway, not via the center. It was just too slow. The center just took too long to take up that information, and that was useless to me. So I think the other way is probably better. But anyway, I'll be able to see it now. I'll be able to see what's going on, and I'll be able to hear what's going on as well, because I've got this headphone which will be running up into my jacket. And the other thing that we've got here that's kind of cool is this. If I turn this on, this is actually hooked up. It's got a little USB connector in here, and that's now charging my phone as well. So that's another nice little thing that we have going on here. So so now I can ride. I can go for, you know, a 2 or 3 hour ride, or a whole day ride if I want to, and I don't have to worry about my phone going flat. The other advantage is that what I could do is I could run any kind of USB from this thing. It's 2 amp, so it's a fast charge. I could run that back to my center if my center's running out of battery, which often it does when you're trying to record things, which is also frustrating. So so it's quite nice having that ability to do that. So obviously now I have to test all of this. I haven't tested any of it. It's only been tested in the shop with a radar gun in the shop, and I have no idea what it's like when you're actually physically riding around with it. But tomorrow is going to be the day for that, because tomorrow I'm going to ride this to Auckland. So I'm going to get myself geared up, get up real early in the morning, head out. Maybe tonight, maybe I'll go for a quick ride, but I'm not going to do it now because it's we're kind of in a rush hour kind of time. I might as well just do the whole lot tomorrow and just take my chances. So that's what I think I'll do. I want to get an early night tonight because I want to start at 5:30, 6 o'clock tomorrow and just be out of here as quick as possible before the traffic gets started. Obviously it's a little bit manual at the moment because I have to open the box, and I still have to physically turn the thing off or disconnect it because it's physically sitting on the battery, kind of like in a standby mode. But you know, it's not a huge deal, and I'm pretty happy with it overall. I could run my music from here as well if I want to, but I can run my music via my center anyway if I want to do that. So that's not a big deal. That's not even an issue for me. The main issue for me here was I wanted the alerts. I want to know where I'm at. You know, I want to know if I'm in an unfamiliar area and I'm doing 100 and it's suddenly 70 and I don't know it's 70, this will alert me, this will tell me it's 70. If I'm doing over 110, this thing's going to tell me, it's going to say you're doing over 110. It's very easy to do it on this bike. So and I want to know that if I get up an overtaking lane and if I want to pass someone or want to pass a line of cars, I don't have to think about too much about is there a cop up ahead or all that kind of nonsense. So I'd rather have some sort of security against that kind of stuff. So yeah, I guess all the haters will do their, you shouldn't have a radar detector stuff and all that sort of carry on. Personally, good on you if that's what you think. You carry on your way and I'll carry on my way, because I quite like the idea, just the same as lots of other people, and at least the people that want to be informed can be informed. It wasn't a huge job to fit this up. It became a slightly bigger job because I still wanted my phone mount and I had to build a steel mount just underneath to mount everything onto. But it was pretty straightforward. It all kind of moves with the bars, so it doesn't collect on everything, which is great. So overall, I'm pretty happy. Yeah, I guess that's where it's at until tomorrow, and we'll make a video on it actually running, and I'll show you how it runs, and then we can have another chat about it. So it's hard for me to completely evaluate the radar detector yet. I haven't set the thing up well enough. There's quite a few settings on it, but one thing's for sure. I mean, if you're going down a straight road, like some of the roads where I was, the cops basically, they are just flicking their radar on as you approach them, especially if you're the lone kind of vehicle on the road. So you've got to be aware of that, because they can flick it on when they're right pretty much on top of you, and you won't get any warning when that happens. Speed cameras and other stuff, you don't get heaps of warning, but you get a bit. It's better than nothing, because there's lots of areas where you could go where I'm riding anyway, where I don't know where all the speed cameras are, so the database kind of alerts me. Is it worth the investment? I don't know. It's a lot of money for something that I reckon, years ago, 10 years ago, it used to be pretty effective. These days I would say probably not so much. I know some people are kind of swearing by it, but I just think that you'd be a fool to think that you're completely safe with a radar detector on your bike or in your car. You're just not these days. It'd be far better to be stealthy. There are other products that you can get that are probably better, I think. Blinders, which basically blind the radar or jam the radar. Technically they're not legal. Technically you're not supposed to sell them, but people still sell them. You can still buy them. And I reckon if you're gonna, like if I was gonna do this again, that's what I would do. I'd spend a little bit more money and I'd get some sort of blinding system, so that they don't have, they already have a hard time picking a bike up anyway. So I just sort of think with that extra edge that you could get from some sort of blinding device, it would probably be a far better investment than a radar detector. But again, I've only ridden for like half, not even half a day, a few hours really, so it's quite hard for me to comment on it fully yet, because I haven't ridden around with it enough yet. But that's my initial impression of the thing. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say about it. Ask questions if you want, and I'll try and answer them as best as I can. Oh, money wise too, what do you have to spend? Well, it's quite a few dollars, so I reckon you're going to look at spending, by the time you get yourself a waterproof case and any sort of decent radar sort of setup, you can set yourself back about probably around $1,400, which is quite a bit of money. It's quite a bit of coin, buy a lot of goodies for your bike for $1,400. Go. Radar detector's going off. What does that look like up ahead? We know exactly what that is. Yeah. Sure enough. Yeah, well, I got that in plenty of time, and that was a VW van too, not even the ordinary kind of van that you expect to see one in. I picked him up in plenty of time.
So this is interesting. I think that this car in front of me is an undercover car. Pretty sure it is. Keep getting the radar going off every now and again. He's just doing a nice consistent pace, but and overtaking kind of everyone so far. But I don't know whether he's revving me up to try and overtake him or not. Tempting, but not going to do it.
Okay, so since recording my last video with the radar detector on my bike and riding in the rain and kind of scooting around, I've obviously had a little bit more time with the radar detector and discovered a few potential flaws and some things that are good and some things that are not so good, so I thought I'd share those things with you guys. And the other thing was that when I was shooting some of the stuff on my bike when I first did the installation, I didn't realise my camera was just in the wrong angle and things like that, so I thought I'd show you also the radar detector, what it comes with, what you get for your money and things like that. So I'll try and go through it in some sort of order and then we'll kind of take it from there. Anyway, we'll start with the radar detector. So the radar detector itself, this is the unit, the Redline EX. It comes pretty much as you see there. It's quite a substantial unit, it's quite solid. Has some sort of substance to it. You know, the screen on the front is fairly intuitive, but you know, for a motorbike rider, this is the screen is not really going to matter to you too much, because the reality is you're not going to really be able to use that screen to your advantage, because it's all going to be about audio alerts. Comes with a little handy bag to keep it all in, which again, this is good if it's in the car, it's not so good if it's anywhere else. And it comes with, you know, the connector to connect it into your car, and it also comes with a little suction cup thing that sits on the top of here. Now I haven't got that thing at the moment, and the reason I don't have that is because I accidentally left it in my van in Auckland and I've got to get it sent to me by my brother, so so I don't have that at the moment, but it's magnetic actually, so which is quite nice, and it holds it pretty solid and pretty snugly. So this in a car or in a van or something like that would be ideal, it'd be perfect, you know, I mean, it would do everything you want, I reckon, and you get your alerts and you'd see your alerts and you could have your smartphone going and all those kinds of things. What I found in reality on the bike was that the smartphone just really, it doesn't really, well, the way I had it set up, it just doesn't really work for you, because you're just not looking at it, you can't see it. So the audio alerts, everything. I had a big problem with my audio alerts because I'm a little bit deaf and there's a lot of wind noise going on inside the helmet, and hearing the alerts sometimes was quite difficult. I could definitely solve that with the center setup, so that's going to be my aim, is going to be to try and solve that by getting this extra accessory so that I can get that happening. Currently I don't have the radar detector set up because that bike, I'm obviously not in Auckland anymore and I'm not in New Zealand anymore, so I'm now in Australia and these things are kind of illegal over here, which is a slight problem. Yeah, so that's kind of where things are at. Now I'm going to set this up again, I'm going to set up on my new bike, but I'm going to have it a bit more stealthy, so that's the plan. So I'll show you a couple of things problems that I had. So one of the problems I had was the mounting case itself. So the mounting case itself has got like this kind of like lug on the back of it that your mount slides onto, and this is the mount here, and it has these little feet, and these little feet are supposed to slip over the top of this, so typically it would slide on like that and it would be locked on. It's kind of hard to do it here because it's all busted. No, I haven't got the thing, but that's basically how it goes on. And this on the bike was quite useless. I mean, these feet are just pathetic. They little bits of plastic. I didn't expect them to snap off. I didn't even really think about this, but what happened is that after I'd ridden the bike around about 3 times, these all just snapped off. They just vibrated off. They just couldn't handle it. They're not up to the task. This thing would have had to be made of billet aluminium for this to be any good. And even then, I don't know, it probably still would weaken out. So this setup, this way of mounting this case is no good for a motorbike, I don't reckon. I certainly wouldn't trust it. And that radar detector itself is a fairly heavy unit. So when that's, you know, on top of there and it's got a little bit of wobbling around, it's always going to break out. It's always going to be a problem. So so this is not ideal. This is not the way to mount it. What I think you probably have to do is you probably have to have a screw and a washer a flatter one than this, drill a hole in the back of the case, and this has really got to be really screwed on there with a big flat washer on the inside of this, and so that there's no way that can come undone. You do not want that coming undone. I was doing a ride when this all went wrong, and this ended up floating over the top of my clip-ons, and it was just a disaster. It just was not good. So that's one thing I've learned, is that the way this holds onto the bike needs to be modified. It simply isn't good enough out of the box. The cords and everything else, the way I had it all set up, this was all fine. The problem that I did have later on is that the headphone that I had was a very, very cheap headphone, and that was going into my ear, and when I was moving my head around, because I was attached to this wire, what happened eventually was that I just yanked the wires out of the end of the headphone, and I ended up not getting the alerts obviously after that happened, so that was not so great neither. But these are problems that can be solved, and take 2 on this is going to be different. I'm going to do it differently. I'm definitely going to be drilling a hole in this. I'm definitely going to be mounting rubber washer and stuff to keep water out of the inside of this. Otherwise, all pretty good, aside from those problems. Yeah, that's. I guess the other thing too was that I had a lot of stuff in my dash, and I'll show you the picture of that. It was just too much. It was like radar detector and phone, and what I'm missing at the moment on my new bike is I don't have the phone set up at the moment, or this set up. And this was so great, man. I really, really miss having this. So this is definitely going to go on my new bike, because being able to mount your phone on your bike is just such a handy thing. Like the amount of times people ring you, or not that you're stopping and ringing, but you can answer your phone from your centre, you can see who's on the call, you can get your GPS navigation and everything happening from this. This is super handy. And the good thing about this one is it had this USB connector thing on it, so that meant that I could charge things on the fly. I could charge my phone on the fly if I was doing a long ride and I needed the GPS to go for a long period of time. I could charge pretty much anything that required a fast charge from this device, and normally that would be mounted on the top of the headstand, and that would sit in your headstock, and your phone mounts on top of it. You wouldn't normally have all these other brackets. I have those brackets because I had all this extra stuff on there, but that was a pretty cool setup. I like that setup, but for the phone, not for the radar detector that way. So I'd look at mounting the radar detector a different way. And this holder, I guess, this is designed to go into your steering stem, and what happens is it's got this like a wedged kind of piece in there, and as you do this up, it expands itself out a bit like a Dynabolt, and then it just holds itself, and it will never come off. If that hadn't broken, I'd have never had a problem. The other way this could have been done, I guess, is this could have been glued, epoxied directly onto the bottom here. You could put that on there, and you could epoxy it on. The only problem with doing that is that once it's on there like forever. You would never get it off. Especially if you use really good epoxy glue, it just would not come off. It would be totally on there, and you would not be able to get that bolt undone. But that again is another option. I guess you could drill a hole in the bottom of there where you can access the screw if you ever did need to get it off. And that's another option. There are a few options here as to how to get this mounted. I'm going to explore a few and have a bit of a play with that. So yeah, that's that side of things. Now the centre, I thought I'd show you guys, for people who don't know what the centre looks like. This is the centre setup that I have. I've got a couple of different centres. This is my one with the camera in it, 10C I think this is called. And that means I can connect my phone, I can record videos while I'm riding, I can answer my phone if my phone's ringing, I could listen to music if I want to. I'm not big on listening to music when I'm riding, I just like listening to my bike, but the main thing is I can communicate with other riders that have got these. So I had a couple of friends in New Zealand, sometimes 3 or 4 of us we'll be connected up, and we could have group conversation, and that was super handy. Like you could be riding down the road, and if I was getting radar alerts, for example, I could say to the other rider that I'd be aware, there's something's happening up front, there might be a cop up there, slow down, or I could do things like when I was out riding with my mate one night, and I come along and there's farm fence open halfway across the road, and I'm like, dude, watch out, you're going to come around the corner, there's going to be a farm fence in the middle of the road, so be aware, slow down. You know, if you turn off, if you're getting ahead of someone or something like that, you can say, look, I'm waiting on the side of the road, I'll see you 500 metres up the road or a kilometre up the road or whatever it is. So, you know, super handy, man. It's just one of the best investments for your bike, I reckon, that centre setup. It's a little bit pricey, as I've said before, but I just think it's so worth it, like, so totally worth it. It's one of the best things I've ever had on my bike in the way of communications. Yeah. So, what did I think of the Detector after using it a little bit longer? It's still probably too early for me to really evaluate it really well, because I just have had these problems, you know, with the setup, with the earpiece not working properly, with me being a little bit deaf and the noise being in my helmet, not being able to hear all the alerts all the time. But overall I found that about, well, at least 50% of the time I could, you know, I knew there was a cop around. I just, you know, you picked them up well before you got to them, like well before you got to them. Speed cameras, same kind of thing. About half the time you picked them up really early, and the other half of the time was kind of when you were kind of on top of them, but still enough. But if you know, unless you're doing really excessive speed, it'd still give you enough notice. What else can I say about it? I mean, the other thing about this, I guess, is that I'm going to be testing this. I'm going to be setting this up with the auxiliary center Bluetooth connector. So what that will mean is that all the audio alerts will go into that auxiliary unit, and the auxiliary unit will be blasting those alerts straight into my helmet. Now, what I'm hoping is that you get those alerts kind of in real time, and that the center is not slow to pick that stuff up. I don't think it will be. I think it'll be pretty instant. I think it's going to be pretty good. And that's my next plan, is to set that up, and then I'll be able to test it some more, and I'll be able to tell you how good it is or how bad it is, whichever the case happens to be. I think it's going to be pretty good. I think it's going to be pretty useful. But we'll see. You know, the jury's kind of still out at this stage. It definitely saved me a few times on my trip to Auckland for sure. Not that I was going super fast, but you know, there were a few times when we were on overtaking lanes and things where there were cops coming the other way, and I was well ahead of them. There was a time where I had the detector just kept going nuts, and I just had no idea where the cop was. Again, because I'm getting the alerts, but it's not telling me the direction where the cop is, whereas the next level detector up from this gives you alerts, and it tells you, well, it doesn't tell you which direction, but it shows you which direction the cop is. And in this particular case, the cop happened to be behind me, so he was obviously radaring people as he was coming up. And so if I'd been doing, you know, it was on a big motorway with like 3 lanes, and I could have easily been doing maybe 120 or something like that, and then I'd have been in trouble if I hadn't had that, because maybe I wouldn't know he was there, and he'd be up behind, and he could just sneak up behind. But with that, I was able to pick him up. I knew there was someone somewhere, and sure enough, he was there. He was just following up, coming up behind the traffic up the back. So yeah, so it saved my ass a few times so far. It's been good. And I've just got to you know, get the setup really nice. Once that's set up better, then I'll be pretty happy with it. So that's the plan. That's what I'm going to do next. And I'll make some more videos on this for sure, because it'll be an interesting experiment, I think, to, you know, to continue it out and see where we go with it.